If you're already a fan of rhythm games, you probably realize that there's not really that much diversity as far as actual game mechanics go. Maybe there's new graphic overlays or different visual cues for when to hit what buttons, but overall, it's a rhythm game. And we know those, and we like them because they're familiar. But in today's game review of Frederic, the Resurrection of Music, and Frederic 2, we're going to find some unique things that I've honestly never encountered in a rhythm game, and rarely in any other games for that matter. You start off the game as the newly resurrected zombie of Frederic Chopin, who is a classic composer and pianist. As Frederic, you're confronted at nearly every turn by representatives of mainstream genres of music or different varieties and styles. You must then engage them in a piano battle in order to get them to confess to you some key detail as to why you were resurrected in the first place. This leads you all around the world, encountering various representatives of different genres as well as ethnic music styles. One thing you may initially notice, even though it might not be in your first encounter with a challenger, is the somewhat stereotypical and kind of racist overtones of the general imagery, voice acting, and dialogue of certain characters that you encounter. While this might be pretty comical to some, it could actually come across as offensive to several others, so take it with a grain of salt. The length and content of the video scenes just really wasn't that great. I kind of wanted to hurry it up to get to the music part for the actual battle, but I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to miss any important details in case that actually had an effect on gameplay. Cliff Notes version, it doesn't. So feel free if you're playing the game and actually just enjoy the rhythm game to skip any of the actual visual scenes. One thing that unites Frederic and Frederic 2, besides the sort of stereotypical overtones, is the actual plea to the consumer and players of the game to wake up and acknowledge that music should be free. And while this is great, it also critiques every single genre of music from every single country in favor of potentially more original indie music. Now, there actually have been studies done that show that the quality of lyrics over the past few years has degraded by a full mark, and out of 4 marks, that's a lot, as well as the fact that dynamic synthesis of music to make it louder or more poppy actually reduces the timbre or the quality of all music. So I can see where this argument is valid, but if you're in this to just play a game, you probably don't want to be assaulted by someone else's political viewpoints. Now, that aside, the integration of an actual piano dynamic into a musical rhythm game was really cool. There were only a few things that I could say were difficult about the gameplay, and that is that though you can play with the actual buttons on the controller, it is incredibly difficult. I found myself foregoing all controllers and just using the touchscreen, which is nice because the Switch's touchscreen has a multi-point functionality, so you actually can use multiple fingers when notes are flowing back and forth across the keyboard. It's really neat, I gotta say, it's pretty high quality. The only other thing is that as the perspective of the notes coming from the center and spreading out to the outer keys is somewhat skewed because of perspective, sometimes notes near the outermost line will cover up notes on the outermost line, so it makes it very difficult and forces you to rely mainly on memory if you're replaying the level. If you get a good or an excellent score or a perfect score on any individual note, a large placard of perfect shows up in the middle of the screen toward oncoming notes, and it covers them up, so you are blocked from actually seeing which notes come next. So the better you get at the game, the more difficult it becomes because you're going to be getting more excellence and perfects, and that is going to block everything you can see. So in many levels, I actually found myself trying to avoid getting perfect notes or just blatantly memorizing it. Aside from the gameplay and serialized battles throughout your travels through the world, as Frederic, when you beat the game, there are actually incentives to play it on harder and harder modes, and that is unlocking certain modes in the arena and new chapters with new visual imagery and videos. Though, you know, take it or leave it. If that's your thing, if you're a completionist, go for it. If not, whatever. I actually played Frederic 1 and 2 back-to-back in one sitting, so they're pretty short games, and if you want to replay through them to unlock everything, it probably won't take you that long. As opposed to Frederic, the Resurrection of Music, Frederic 2 actually goes to a more modern critique, and the people you battle are caricatures of well-known figures, to include Britney Spears, Michael Jackson, and Queen, believe it or not. though the social critique in nearly every other character you battle is very, very obvious. I guess the producer of this game just liked Freddie Mercury and Queen. Overall, I'd say they're a pair of pretty decent rhythm games, if you can put aside the overt stereotypes of world culture and the plea to the audience to disenfranchise themselves from modern pop music. But as for myself personally, I do consider myself to be more a fan of world culture, and those kind of things did rub me the wrong way, besides the fact that I don't really like being told what I should believe or what I should like. But as far as the actual functionality of the game goes, there's not a lot to critique besides the pop-up flash messages for perfects and excellent notes, which, I mean, I love knowing that I did great, but I would also like to be able to see the next cues coming down the pipe. But getting back to the topic, as a game reviewer and just as a human being with a conscience, I don't think I could actually recommend these games to anyone. I mean, if you're such a fan of rhythm games that you want to just have it in your collection, feel free. But due to the highly politically charged nature and racial overtones and hints of nationalism, I really can't in good conscience actually recommend these games. Well, that's pretty much it for the review of these two games. If you found these reviews helpful or at least entertaining, feel free to throw me a like, and don't forget to subscribe for the latest content. I put these videos up as often as I can because I think that these indie games really do deserve their own spotlight every now and again. So check back on Budget Gamer for the latest content. See you in the next review.